This morning it's my pleasure to introduce you to Ole Wiig, who is a principal partner in the firm NSW, which is based in Oslo. They also have offices elsewhere in Norway and go as far as north of the Arctic Circle. Ole has a significant international experience. He's worked in Italy. He studied in Harvard. He's also worked in Ireland, but most importantly, he worked for 6 years in Edinburgh, and I think he'll probably talk a little about that later. So welcome, Ole, and thank you very much for talking to us today. It's really important. We want to connect more with our members out with, and I hope that this is part of that.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
Pleasure. So first of all, I'd just like to know why you became an architect.
Why I wanted to become an architect? Well, I can tell you that for a start, I was very keen on drawings. When I was little, I used to draw all kinds of things. And also, I think another inspiration came from a professor of architecture and planning living very close to where I grew up. And I knew they had great influence on society. And also my parents had an architect friend. So I think all these three aspects influenced me to become an architect.
Yeah. And why do you think architects matter in today's society?
Yeah, well, especially this professor, because he was the guy who was involved in not only great planning, great architectural work, but he also wanted to influence society. And he was like a spokesman for architecture in newspapers, etc. So I thought that was great the way he, in fact, wanted to influence not just cities or plans, but also people.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if we're connecting, I mean, there's elements which are clear, which are global and which are shared, but just thinking a little about the members out with, how do you feel architectural practice differs in Norway, or does it?
And I think it's very, very similar. I mean, obviously it's a few years since I was working in Scotland, but I followed Scotland. And as you know, I'm a proud fellow member of the RIAS. I've been for a number of years. I think it's fantastic, and I obviously read the RIAS quarterly, and I follow what's going on, and I feel there is very little difference between Scotland and Norway when it comes to the practice of architecture. Obviously, it's got something got to do with climate. We do probably things a bit different, but I think the attitude and the relevance is very similar.
I think that's really great to hear, because I think what we're keen to do is increase that fellowship and connection, because sometimes, you know, I think we feel quite isolated, or we feel, you know, that is better elsewhere. So the more we connect and maybe share our challenges, but also any of the good stuff, I think it's really important.
I can tell you just a brief one. In fact, when I was the architecture president in Norway, we had a joint convention with the RIAS in Strathpeffer. It was fantastic. And lots of Norwegians came across in their national costumes, meeting the Scottish male architect in their kilts, and had a wonderful party.
Yeah, well, I think that sounds like something we should be doing. I don't know if you knew, but I'm based in Strathpeffer. That one I wasn't aware of, so great to know that. So just turning to a standard question I like to ask is, you know, what's your favorite place or your favorite town?
My favorite place, I have to admit, is Charlotte Square in Edinburgh. That's my favorite place for a number of reasons, but I also have another favorite place, and that I should mention is at Place de Vosges in Paris, because that was the first planned square in France, planned. And it's very interesting because it's formed like a square. And do you know that Covent Garden in London is exactly the same size? It's also a square. And in fact, that is what introduced the term square into the English language. We talk about square, it comes from, in fact, from Place de Vosges in Paris. So that's my other favorite place.
It's lovely to hear these, you know, things that you do, I wasn't aware of at all, but yeah, interesting, definitely. So what do you feel is your biggest challenge in Scandinavia and for architecture at this moment?
Well, the biggest challenge, it can be put in one word: procurement. I mean, it's quite a challenge. I know it's exactly the same in Scotland. You know, we are not members of EU, but we are associated, affiliated members. We have to abide by the same rules. And then, although Britain is no longer a member of the EU, I think you have the same procurement rules as we have. And that means that if you are a public authority, being a local authority or a state, and you invite architects for a specific job, a specific project, and then normally what we see is that a competition between architects on an architectural level. And then, but then afterwards, then it can also be from the beginning that the authority are asking for three things. One is your relevance to the job, if you're doing something similar, your competence, which is mainly the CV, but then it comes to cost. And far too often, cost is the winner. And if, say, cost counts 50% and quality 50%, there's no point in entering, because then they would choose the cheapest one, irrespective of quality. And I think that's very sad. And another thing is that we also involved in design and build contracts from the beginning. And again, the contractor is often the one who takes on the helm. And then it will kind of dictate what to do. And architecture is put in the bottom drawer. I think this is very sad, and I think it's very similar in Scotland and Norway.
That is the case, and it's something that certainly RIAS is aiming to influence as much as possible. We've had a few wins, but it's interesting to know that Norway is in exactly the same position, and therefore, you know, the challenge is wider. And so yeah, something that we all need to work on together, and that's where it probably sort of segs into my next question, which is, you know, you have been a friend of RIS for quite some time, and I just wonder, for that reason, why do you think an organisation that RIS matters or is important?
Well, I think it's very important, and also, you know, to start off, like just what we've been talking about, the procurement, and I'm very pleased to hear that RIS is now doing something about, trying to do something about it, trying to influence it. It's great. But another thing is that I believe that in order to create great environments, great buildings, you need to have a real strong organization behind you. We've even seen that competitions are being held which are not very relevant and not very respectful, and then an organization like RIS can come in and say, look here, stop, we want to base it on quality. So I think the way RIS can influence society is very, very important indeed. And also, it also has a kind of strong organization between architects, between members, who feel kind of a friendship with the organization. And I think RIS is doing a very good job there.
I think that's something, you know, we've got this voices thing, which we do at the moment, but we're really keen in building RIS's voice as well. I think that's fundamental within Scottish society. And we're at the start of that journey, but I'm confident that our voice is getting louder.
Yeah.
So
I think one important thing is to be, well, I don't know much about, I don't read many Scottish newspapers or magazines at the moment, but I certainly follow what's going on in Norway. And I think it's very important that architects should be more, if not vociferous, at least clear in the press and in radio, television, etc. And it's quite interesting. We had a discussion between the young members of staff in my office. And you know that what the learning from that was that the young architects were saying that architects must be more visible in the environment, must take part in the public debate much more than we used to.
Absolutely. So finally, key question, what do you want to see RIS doing more of in the future?
Well, I think RIS is on the right track. I think it's, I think it should carry on like it is. But as I'm saying, should have greater influence on society. But when it comes to the outwith members, and you have not just me, but lots of outwith members, I've been it for many years, I think you can actually learn a bit from the outwith members. And they have obviously experience from other countries, other places, which could influence the way also RIS is kind of promoting itself. So I think there is some relevance in bringing outwith members more into the workings of the RIS.
Thank you very much. I think you're absolutely right, and I really appreciate the time that you've taken and the fact that you've remained a friend of RIS despite not being in Scotland. And hopefully we'll be talking more in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.